Hi there and welcome to Polymath Thinking 2025. It's great to be back. Plenty of foundational topics for us to cover this year, and we'll kick off by talking about key podcasts that you need to keep an eye on, that we do, that are very, very interesting. Also, in 2025, with the new administration in America and a new government, relatively new government in the UK, less than a year old, plenty of governmental macro issues will be on the table. So we can apply our foundational wisdom, our apex wisdom, to that in terms of what a government should do, what a government should spend, and therefore what the private sector should do and spend as well. And there's a book from Ray Dalio coming out soon as well, How Countries Go Broke, although he's done a lot of work on that in the past as well. New book coming out on gold, which we'll tell you more about later as well, from us, which you'll find very interesting as well, telling you all you need to know about gold, its legacy, history and future. But look, let's talk about podcasts first quickly, so that you can get full bottle, because there's some incredible ones out there, and they've got massive back catalogues as well, some of which is quite useful as well. Now, two podcasts that I use for physics, space, science in general, a whole range of science-related topics, are Space Time with Stuart Gary and Space Nuts with Andrew Dunkley and Professor Fred Watson. You really need to listen to those two. They're done on a weekly basis and they are fantastic. They're syndicated globally, especially Space Time with Stuart Gary. Very, very valuable podcasts. Highly recommend them in terms of science, space, physics, and their science report. But on top of them, as you're probably aware, there is a plethora of long-form podcasts that now appear on the internet that have sort of sprung out of nowhere over the last 8-9 years. And you know some of the names, anyone from Joe Rogan and that milieu. But what I thought I'd do is quickly list them all for you, the ones that I listen to, because they are very valuable. Start off with Dark Horse. That's Brett Weinstein and his wife, Dr. Heather Hyams. Brett's a PhD as well and a former professor of biology, so he knows what he's doing. And that podcast, the Dark Horse podcast, is very thoughtful. It's amusing, but it's incredibly thoughtful, talking about anything from health to politics to science, and wisdom in general, and judgment, and how you make decisions and how you deal with mistakes, because we all make mistakes. And it's a very honest podcast. It's a very good podcast. Highly recommend it. And Brett Weinstein was recently on Joe Rogan as well, and that was a very interesting podcast. So that's the first one. Then another one, Mark and Ben. Now that sounds like a couple of bros in their dorm, but it's actually Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz who put Loud Cloud together. They were at Netscape together as well. Very talented. They run Andreessen Horowitz, the venture capital firm in America, who've been behind a lot of successes. And both Andreessen and Horowitz are up there. They really know what they're doing. And Ben Horowitz has written potentially the best book in business, which is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Obviously mainly about tech firms, but The Hard Thing About Hard Things is probably number one. With Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 as being close in, or equal pegging, let's say. And 0 to 1 is a brilliant book, but The Hard Thing About Hard Thing is incredibly practical. That's Ben Horowitz and Mark and Ben podcast. That's very valuable. The big one that I can recommend is the Jordan B. Peterson podcast. That's Dr. Peterson, who I'm sure we've all heard of, who's the Canadian clinical psychologist who's now written books, and he goes on tours, but he has this long form podcast, and his last 12 months have been spectacular. There's been anything from Richard Dawkins, discussion with him, more recently to the aforementioned Mark Andreessen, Tony Robbins, Michael Malice, Alex Epstein, the energy thinker and information aggregator, Alex Epstein. Very worthwhile looking at him as well, and he covers a range of topics from food, big pharma, so on and so forth, and it's just every podcast he does is a delight. It's very, very, very interesting. He's on the Daily Wire, so that's worth signing up to that, but extremely valuable if you're interested in foundational wisdom. There's no topic that's off limits, and that gets you to the truth quicker than anything else in terms of listening to those who are prepared to go to the heart of matters as quickly as possible, admit when they made mistakes and they're wrong, and show their work and their workings, and point you in the direction of other great thinkers as well. So that's why Jordan Peterson is very, very good. He's right up there, and we've done pieces on things that he's done with Richard Dawkins in the past, the noted atheist, and others. And of course there's important topics that we, polymath thinking, you've got to get to the bottom of, using judgment and wisdom to get there, and of course that's very possible. Now, on top of that, there is Piers Morgan with his Uncensored podcast. He's done all sorts of things in the past. He's been paper editor, and he was on popular shows and this, that and the other, but he has found his calling with this Uncensored podcast. It is good value. He also has very serious guests on who are worth listening to. It's a shorter podcast, but well worth listening to. Piers Morgan deals with everything from pop culture through to interviewing the likes of, once again, Richard Dawkins. Richard's likes doing these long form podcasts, and teasing out these key fundamental issues as well. He had Graham Hancock on, talking about ancient apocalypses, his view of the pyramids. So you can basically come across whatever, as well as politics, on the Piers Morgan Uncensored podcast. You've got people like Candace Owens. She's got more pop material on there, as well as politics, as well as her investigative journalism, which is interesting. You don't have to pass judgment. You can just listen to it and be entertained. And of course, Russell Brand, who's now moved into this form of podcasting as well. He did the Trues for a long time, but now he's that was long gone. That was a long time ago. 2014 he finished that, but 2015 he finished that up, and now he's on Rumble, and he has Neil Oliver on and Lara Logan and some very good guests on as well, who bring a lot of wisdom to what they're saying. Well worth listening to, and just a breath of fresh air after the mainstream legacy media, who just serve up bits, and maybe there's an interview here or there that's interesting, but it's not this backwards and forwards for hour and a half, 2 hours. Joe Rogan has done up to 3 hours apparently, and it's good value. You tease out a lot of information. It's very, very valuable. So highly recommend those podcasts, and email me or go to the website if you're looking for others as well, depending on what you're looking for. But those podcasts are critical to understanding the world in the modern context, and then with at least a throwback as well, in some cases 5,000 years, so that you can look at the setup of the modern world, because it's taken 50 centuries, 5,000 years to set it up. And you need to understand that if you want to have a strong sense of what's going on now, with the reflective relaxation and peace of mind that brings as well, because that is the ultimate peace of mind, the ultimate Peace of mind only comes from apex wisdom, and that's understanding, comprehension. Anyway, tell me what you think. Andrew@keops.au. Thanks.